Today, I'm going to be talking about politics, IRAs, and taxes. Oh my, lots going on right now. And I have to clarify, if you're confused, you're not alone. Just about everybody is confused. I think even the people in Congress right now. What happened last week was the infrastructure bill was passed, but the Build Back Better Act has not been passed yet, as far as this morning when I was reading. So there's still a lot out there that is proposed, but not finalized. So I wanted to make that clear. What I'm going to talk about today are some of the proposals that we just don't quite know how things are going to end up. Three things I want to talk about today. We do know the 2022 limits from the IRS, and I will go over those. There's some good news there, actually. I want to talk a little bit about the questions surrounding backdoor Roth IRAs. Oh my goodness. And finally, what should I be doing now in all of this uncertainty? There are a few things that you can do to help you going forward. So first off, the 2022 limits from the IRS. Well, good news. They have been increased on most, but not all, fronts. So the 401k and 403b limits have been increased. If you are under age 50, you will be able to contribute up to $20,500 into either your 401k or 403b. For those over age 50, that has been increased to $27,000. Now that probably sounds like a lot to you. That is a special aspect of the 403b and 401k that you can contribute a lot more than you can in an IRA, and that's on purpose. So what about IRAs? Well, sadly, that has not changed. That's the same as it has been for the past few years. The maximum contribution that you can make to an IRA or Roth IRA, $6,000 if you're under age 50 and $7,000 if you're over age 50. Now, these have other rules on them as to your eligibility to contribute. So do know that. I'm not going to go into those today, but those are the maximum limits if you meet all of the rules. What's kind of cool is one of those rules is the income threshold, and that has been increased. Yay! That means that more people might be able to contribute to a Roth IRA. I'm speaking specifically of Roths here. So if you are married filing jointly, the Roth IRA phase out starts at $204,000 of income. Keeping in mind, this is your modified adjusted gross income. So not just gross, but after you take your deductions and some other things, that's what the number is. And if you're single, that number will be $129,000 in 2022. If you have questions about that, talk to your CPA or talk to one of us. Now, Roth IRAs, let's get into that. I'm really happy that the limits have been increased a bit. Thankfully, what has happened is it sounds like this idea of banning the backdoor strategy has been abandoned at the moment. The latest version took that out. Again, still it's proposed. We don't know what the final version will look like, but that has been in a lot of conversation recently. Another thing that is interesting is another proposal was to take required minimum distributions from Roth IRAs that were over $10 million. Probably doesn't affect most of the people on this call, but it was an interesting idea that was tossed around by Congress. Why is that significant? Because one of the point of the Roth IRA was that you didn't have to take required minimums like you do from your other IRAs or 401ks or 403bs. So the idea that they might change this was kind of a big deal in financial circles. So what should I do now if we're not quite sure how things will turn out? Well, first off, I'm going to beat on this drum once again. Roth conversions. I've talked to many experts and most people agree that you should be looking at the idea of Roth conversions. They're not appropriate for everybody, guys, but at least be looking at the option. If you have a lot of money, all of your money for retirement that's in a pre-tax vehicle, an IRA, a 401k, something like that, you should be talking to your advisor about, should I be considering Roth conversions and what would that look like for me? That's because that may or may not go away in the future. So you consider doing it now while you can. Another idea, taking IRA distributions now to take advantage of lower tax brackets. We'll talk about this in the next slide. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed a few years ago will sunset in the year 2025. And if it's left like that, then tax brackets will increase. The amount of taxes will revert back to before that law was enacted. So it's something to kind of know about. 2025, there could be some changes there. And finally, if you are required to take required minimums out of your IRAs, consider QCDs or qualified charitable distributions. This is a way that you can gift money to charity. It's good for the charity, but you also avoid the taxes, so it's good for you. It's a really neat solution if you don't need those required minimums in your own cash flow. As I mentioned, on the horizon, 2025, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act expires, could revert to higher rates. The backdoor strategy, even if it makes it out of this legislation and everything stays okay for now, it's very likely that it's still might get axed later. And finally, Roth conversions may get scrutinized or changed in the future. We're not sure. So be thinking about those while you can still do them.